Hi guys, Praxgirl here. In our last lesson, we found that economic progress is only possible under capitalism. We saw that while progress is initiated by the smartest individuals in society, the entrepreneurs, the lion's share of the benefits of accumulated capital actually go to the wage earners and the poorest people in the economy. We can now see that our study of the market process can be explained in a logically consistent manner. This process is the result of the intertwinement of actions and reactions, of moves and countermoves. The market is whole and therefore indivisible. But because of our inability to perceive the entire social body in one fell swoop, we're put in a position where we have to divide each part and study them separately. In this lesson, we will focus on the determination of prices within the market. Our task will be to understand what forces affect the way in which individuals will evaluate transactions and finally set a price to goods and services. We will be using metaphors that can sound automatic and mechanical, but there is nothing automatic about the market process. The market is nothing but the result of the conscious aims of men who have values and act on them. It's important to emphasize that our study of the market is rooted in the fact of human action. Most criticisms of free markets employ emotional appeals due to the misunderstanding of descriptive metaphors. We must never lose sight of the fact that markets are the result of you and me and Joe and Patrick, and the fact that we choose, that we act. In our lesson on economic calculation, we discussed that a price arises at the moment when two individuals exchange goods with each other and form a trading ratio. The price of a good is expressed in terms of how much of the other good is traded for. Price is therefore simply the outcome of two actors expressing their preference for what they get over what they give up through the action of an exchange. In a simple barter situation, there is nothing more that catalactics can say about the formation of prices. But as we have learned, the market is the outcome of the division of labor, and therefore more factors play into the realization of market prices. The trade is performed through indirect exchange, and one good is on the side of every transaction. This means there are less relevant prices for acting individuals to take into account, and it also means that they can perform economic calculation. This single good, money, therefore facilitates the margins for the setting of prices to be very narrow. By narrow, what we mean is, in a market setting, a business, say that of bottled water, arises because there is enough demand by consumers for the venture to be profitable to the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur produces bottled water, and because of the multiple acts of exchange between him and his customers, he is able to set a price high enough that stops him from running out of all his bottled water before he can replenish the supply, and low enough so that he is not left over with an excess supply. In the entrepreneur's production process, a point is reached when producing another unit of bottled water would fetch a lower price than the cost he undertook to produce it. This process, coupled with the element of catalactic competition, creates the market price for bottled water. The market price of a good is therefore affected by the supply of bottled water and the demand for bottled water. Money makes it clear for consumers where to go to get the best possible price of a homogeneous good for the attainment of their desired ends. Entrepreneurs compete to best satisfy those ends, which in turn produces either profit or loss for them. Profit is the result of the entrepreneur setting prices low enough to meet demand while at the same time keeping the prices of capital goods lower. Loss means that prices are too high, either actuated by supply or lower demand. When profits are high, opportunity arises for other entrepreneurs to cut into the share of those profits by increasing supply. When there are losses, the marginal entrepreneurs who are producing the good at higher costs are forced out of the production. We can thus see the importance of the role of the entrepreneur. These keen actors competitively set in motion the forces that could ultimately eliminate profits altogether and bring about a hypothetical final price. You may have seen this visualized before in the form of two curves that intersect, one for supply and one for demand. The place where they meet is the final price that would come about if no other changes in data occur. But these graphs and mathematical models don't tell us anything else. Mathematical expression of human action does no more than what verbal logic can already do. It expresses reality. But what this means is that expressing praxeology in mathematical symbols violates the scientific principle of Occam's razor, that science should be as simple as possible. In physics, causal relations can only be assumed hypothetically and later verified by referring to precise, observable regularities. Therefore, it makes sense to use mathematical symbols to express these relationships. But in praxeology, we already know the causal force at work, human action. Therefore, the usage of mathematical symbols would be a step in futility.
By mathematics, it is possible to connect one statement to another. For instance, I can say that the force is directed toward the sun. I can also tell you, as I did before, that the planet moves, so that if I draw a line from the sun to the planet and draw another one at some definite period, like 3 weeks later, the area that's swung out by the planet is exactly the same as it will be in the next 3 weeks and the next 3 weeks and so on as it goes around the sun. Now, I can explain both of those statements to you carefully, but I cannot explain why they're both the same. So the first thing we have to worry about is that even in mathematics, you can start in different places. Because of all these various theorems are interconnected by reasoning, there isn't any real way to say, well, these on the bottom here are the bottom, and these are connected through logic. Because if you were told this one instead, or this one, you could also run the logic the other way if you weren't told that one, and work out that one. It's like a bridge with lots of members, and it's over-connected. If pieces have dropped out, you can reconnect it another way.
To understand the formation of prices of higher-order goods, we can use the same tools which we use to understand the formation of prices of consumer goods. In the case of consumer goods, acting individuals exchange in expectations of improved conditions because they value the goods that they will get at the end of the exchange more than what they are willing to give up.
Sure.
Prices emerge because there are differences in the valuations.
Thanks, Praxgirl.
It cannot be stressed enough that an exchange will not take place if both people valued the goods equally. Likewise, the owners of the factors of production act in such a way that they envision what people will be willing to pay for the final product in the future. Their aim is to take benefit from the difference in the total price of the factors of production and the expected price of the finished product. This process is called appraisement, and it too affects how prices will arise in the market. This is because, as entrepreneurs engage in the process of constantly driving prices towards a final price, they drive up the demand of some goods and down the demand of other goods. Therefore, the difference between the determination of the price of a higher order good and that of a consumer good consists in the fact that consumer good prices are the outcome of valuation for direct utility, whereas the price of factors of production are the outcome of appraisement on the part of entrepreneurs for expected utility. This means that ultimately all prices are the outcome of consumer valuations. It should be noted that the value of a good is not merely the sum of the values attached to its components. The value of a fruit basket is not merely the sum of the values attached to the individual fruit in the wooden basket. While the prices of each fruit could be summed up, their values could not. A value judgment is always a preference of one good over the other expressed through concrete action. In our early lessons on the fundamentals of action, we learned that there are no constants in the realm of human action, because action is a subjective process, and therefore not open to measurement. So, we know that prices are merely facts of history. Past prices cannot be used to predict future prices. Non-praxeological schools of thought mistakenly believe that the relationship between certain events are well-established empirical laws which help them predict the future, when they are really necessarily and logically praxeological ones. They are facts of a preference at a given moment by certain individuals with states of mind.
What we have here then are the prices of buying the same things, the same fixed market basket, as it's called, of gas, burgers, and movie tickets at 3 different times: January 07, January 08, January 09. The value of the index is 100. That's what base year means. Then what's the value of the index in 2008, and what's the value of the index in 2009?
Now I'm going to discuss how we would look for a new law. In general, we look for a new law by the following process. First, we guess it. Then we well, don't laugh, that's really true. Then we compute the consequences of the guess. to see what, if this is right, if this law that we guessed is right, we see what it would imply, and then we compare those computation results to nature, or we say compare to experiment or experience. If it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. And that simple statement is the key to science. It doesn't make a difference how beautiful your guess is. It doesn't make a difference how smart you are, who made the guess, or what his name is. If it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. That's all there is to it.
If a statement is made that an increase in the supply of commodity A results in reduction of its price, all other things being equal, then according to them, this statement requires testing in Europe, America, Africa, Asia, and Australia, and of course, large amounts of funds will be necessary to properly execute this research. But this statement is not a well-established empirical fact, but rather it's a logically true statement, just like the statements a ball cannot be both red and non-red at the same time, or a person cannot be both dead and alive at the same time, or a man cannot both be a bachelor and married at the same time. It would be ridiculous to test these types of statements to validate their truth, because to state the otherwise is to land into a logical contradiction. Nobody ever was or ever will be in position to observe a change in only one of the market data, all other things remaining equal. Statistics, that is, the process of collecting data and forming mathematical models, are of no use to our study of the market. All prices are ultimately the outcome of personal valuations of acting individuals. In conclusion, we can see that prices are a result of complex interaction among various people, but ultimately market price is the result of people preferring one good over the other. We also learned that although we can use mathematical symbols to express the same praxeological concepts, it would be unscientific of us to use indirect language to express the same ideas given that they don't add any new insight into our theory of action. We also learned that past prices do not tell us anything about the future prices. Although entrepreneurs can use past prices in their art of making profit, praxeology cannot form laws about people's future decisions. Finally, we learned that praxeological theories are not open for falsification through experiments because it is not possible for us to keep all other things equal, as is usually proclaimed in modern economic claims. I'll see you guys in the next lesson.